example-oriented presentation. Here I have taken India as an example, how my QTiME learning dimensions and other things can be used to analyze. I hope it is going to be an interesting one. The first one was more of a concept-oriented webinar. Here, see, India, I've grown up almost like so half of my time in India I spent there, born in India, educated in India. I did my master's from Institute of Science, and I have a different experience of learning at that time. And when I recently was there in India, giving talks and presentations and lectures for a year or so in 2013 and 14, I really saw a different India. There are a lot of things changing, both on educational side, academic side, as well as on the skill training side. And it is heartening to know that things have developed, exponentially over a period of time, and that kind of motivated me to take India as an example for this second session on QTiME. The structure of this webinar is around examining the education as it is, and then look at education in India and its cultural disposition towards making learning happen, and the paradigm shift that everyone is experiencing, and then taken India in perspective, in a QTiME perspective. And I will open the floor for Q&A in the end. Here, we have to understand the education is not just happening in the classrooms. It is happening in three different worlds. It is delivered across, traditionally speaking, it is happening in the world of a policymaker, through the world of policymaker, and through the work of the second world, I call it academics and advocates. And the third world, where the actual learning happens, it begins, is the classroom of a teacher, and where students walk in through the school gates. But that is traditionally happening all these days. But over the past 20 years, just 10 years, a fourth world is creeping up, and it is internet learning, or internet-based learning, e-learning we call it, which is learning from anywhere and accessing content from anywhere. And that is the shaping the education and also the learning which is happening in 21st century. So let's have a brief look at the first world of policymaker. It's a world of fine intelligence. They make bold claims with high rhetoric, and sometimes we see that the purposes, they often conflict, and a good practice, which is a good teaching practice and all that, is often blind in the context in which it is viewed. And they always keep raising standards of education, and that is there always on the top of the agenda. Whereas the second world, where education is permeating through, belongs to academics and advocates. They are glorious bunch of people. They envisage real potential of classrooms, and they would like to see more things happening. And they see problems as opportunities. It is opportunity that we shouldn't be really overlook and grab it and do something with it. And they believe in inclusion. But what I mean by inclusion here is every type of student should be able to be included in the learning process. And the exclusion is not their kind of their agenda. So we cannot really segregate education as such. And reforming the curriculum and the delivery is a constant, driver for them. So we come down to third world, where the classroom teachers, the inhabitants, I should say, mostly will be teachers and students. But they have obstacles to teaching. They have obstacles in terms of the student behavior or coping with the student's behavior, and the structure of the educational system they have to work within, and they experience the pressures from other worlds. What I mean by other worlds is like the world of policymakers, the world of advocates, and administrators, and the fourth world, which is evolving right now, which is e-learning, internet-based learning. They experience pressures from all these worlds. They have supporting staff like teaching assistants and administrators. They have that, but still they have a supporting staff where the main intention of the teachers will be to impart learning. But 10 years from now, what they will be looking at is something will be totally different. They'll not be teaching anymore. This is kind of an observation made over a period of time how things are being transformed, and they'll be more into managing learning, which is happening within the classrooms. And one example of that is we have got flipped classrooms, and where the whole classroom, like the study happens, that learning happens outside, and the discussions, everything happens inside the classroom. It's a very interesting concept, and it really does work in certain circumstances. So we have this fourth world that a technology driven, not technology based, and more to say, more appropriate to say, is internet based. It is modifying our thinking also at the same time, and hence learning gets impacted. So sometimes internet is a fusion of play and work, and there you have opportunities to think fast, which I mean, qualitatively you can think fast and slow. You can also have a lot of data available to you, think, qualitatively. And this is morphing teaching, which is happening in traditional classrooms, towards, I should say, managing that learning, which is happening in the classrooms. It's a very interesting force that we need to reckon with and need to understand. And this slide I had put up last in the first session on QTiME, which is presenting QTiME based learning amongst 40 or 50 flavors of learning I saw at one of the conferences in New Zealand, Wellington, and have highlighted some of the ones in pink, which is lifelong learning and personalized learning and ownership of learning. They all relate to QTiME based learning. So we, at national level, at a level, say, look, I'm no authority on Indian education. I should say that as disclaimer. Okay, let me take caveat on that. What I'm here, this webinar is sharing what I understand, and sharing probably like my 2 cents worth of analysis of Indian education, and analyze it in terms of the QTiME dimensions that they come up with. So whatever may be the case, however we analyze it, however we slice and dice it, we need some outcomes that we desire. So because the world is changing towards managing the learning, we need to make learning happen for the outcomes. It's a desired outcome. And not only that, we need to make learning relevant. And we have to do it now. So whatever the national policy that we would like to develop towards to deal with the challenges of the 21st century, we need to be having this 3 things in focus. And then this is my personal take on this, and everyone else will have your own. There are much more, like I would say that people in administration, they have their own take on all these things. But at the basic level that we all wish to see, it doesn't matter in what kind of world we live, these things to happen, and doing it now makes more sense than postponing it through other agendas. So it means we need to remodel the schools. So then we go around, we have a few things to play with. Do we remodel the structure as it exists today, or do we remodel the mindset with which we make learning happen, or we remodel the culture of learning? What is it that we need to do at this point in time if we really need to face the challenges from 21st century learning. So remodeling a structure or a mindset, I kind of associate that with one of the famous productivity equation, which is a productivity of any kind of learning, that your outcome of that depends on the effort and also the intelligence associated with that effort, with the people who are involved in it. So this is a little basic equation. Whereas if I bring in culture into the mix, which I would like to bring in because there is a definite cultural disposition that India, an Indian based education needs to understand, because we are in a connected world. It's a complex world, and a world which is exploding by day with all the technological innovations which are happening around the world. And it is not, we are not isolated anymore from any of those things. We get to hear them, we get to know them the instant it happens. So we're in a connected world, but our culture is quite different from the cultures from where these are happening, whether it's happening within our own culture or happening in a different country, a different culture that it practices. We have to be mindful of the culture, so that how this really affects whether somebody is going to be first in the world in education, or last in the world, or somewhere in the middle. Everything happens or works around this culture. This is famously talked for almost 2 hours by Dr. Pasi Sahlberg when he was here in Melbourne. And this cultural influence is the one where I will spend some next few minutes on this. The remodeling of culture brings me to Hofstett's cultural dimensions. Hofstett is a German sophisticated, I would call, educationist, and he has studied the whole entire world over decades, and has come up with a little index with which he can say what will be the cultural dispositions of each country. And this is quite really, I was fascinated by the entire study, and more of that is available on his website. I'll put up that if anyone interested later on. The Indian cultural disposition can be analyzed over 6 indices. The first one is a power distance index. I'll kind of go through each of them in the next few slides. India is ranked around 77. The low power distance index is less than or equal to 40. I'm showing 40, less than 40 here. And other cultural disposition about individualism and collectivism, the IDB index. Any country with an index less than 48 is more of a collectivist kind of cultural disposition. And a third index, which is masculinity versus femininity, which is MAS index. If the index is less than 45, it is, you can categorize as more, the culture is more feminine. And the fourth index is uncertainty avoidance index, which is if it is less than 46 or so, you can have it as an avoidance, uncertainty accepting kind of countries or culture that we have there. Back in 1991 or so, this was all 1980s. 1991, they added a new index called long-term orientation. The thinking, the entire culture, which is short-term or long-term. Anything which is less than 44 is going to be associated short-term. And back in 2010, another index was added, which is indulgent versus restraint, IVR index, where culture is supposed to be restrained if that index is less than 33. More of it is available on the website, and there are a lot of other articles available to read on this. It's very fascinating to know that how we need to really, if we need to adopt any model from outside, how we have to localize it for Indian conditions depends on the cultural disposition of India. Sometimes they call it globalization, which is global models working with the local modifications, and they call it globalization. Let's not worry about those jargons, but this is kind of a thing which interested in also has kind of impact on the learning outcomes. Hope this is pretty visible to you all. I think this is a bit light, but PDI I've highlighted India here in red, and it's good to know that USA and Australia, they are high power distance thing, they are pretty low. Like, they are not high power, they are low power, which is around 40-38, and they are together almost. You can see that. This is another thing I observed on other index when I examined other indices. So 77, which is a high power distance. I mean, what does it really mean? There's always an order, national pride, and you need to have a stamp of approval for everything you do. So this is kind of a observed. This is high power distance countries and culture they have. Whereas in those countries which is a low power distance, they want to keep it clean, not too much of bureaucracy involved, and meritocracy rules the day. So the next index I would like to examine with you here is IDV index, which is individualist versus collectivist. If you look at collectivist is less than or equal to 48. So India more or less moderately collectivist, whereas USA and Australia, again, they are together and highly individualist. What does it really mean? If you're individualistic, it's like you're in it to win it kind of thing, and you're unique, and you give them a challenge, and they will take it on and do it. But collectivist, they are more or less works on group dynamics, and morality is very high on their agendas, and representation really carries a lot of meaning. And I'm just joking, there's no I in the team. And wisdom comes, also spelling mistake on wisdom here, comes with age, they believe it, and they want to keep things private. There is some of the things I picked up from a book I reading over last week, and it's called Webs of Influence, the psychology of online persuasion, and they examine these things in much more detail. I can put up that later on if I post it. So the third index is masculine, but what I call highly unfeminine. So if you look at India is again moderately masculine, and again USA and Australia is towards moderately masculine side, and they are again together. So it is like the culture which is we see in USA and Australia, more or less kind of they match, they go close together in all these indices when examined through these cultural lenses. And masculine here more or less carries free the inner explorer kind of thing, the ability to mature kind of class. And they would love to play games, and role play is there on their what do you call the priority thing, and not the priority, like a preferred. And whereas feminine kind of culture more or less based on the quality of life and the pretty social, and they would like to keep it collaborative, which is highly opposite of what normally we think about, feminine actions together in a group. So here, interesting to know is India is kind of moderately, I should say, in borderline there, which is pretty good. So also we should look at the neighboring countries, in India. They're all different. So Hong Kong and Canada seems to be close to India when it comes to that masculine index. If I go back and look at the individualist versus collectivist kind of index, Spain and Japan is there. And if you look at high power distance, China and Egypt, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's like you have different countries neighboring you. India is such a diverse country. It seems to be entire world is there within India. It's one of those things really intrigued me, or when I was studying that. And the other uncertainty award index, here the way that USA and Australia is quite little distance apart, and here India is pretty much close to USA and UK, and they are more accepting, which is pretty good, and it shows that there are certain things which are like on par with other developed countries. And the recently added back in 1991 was a long-term orientation thing. Again, Australia and USA together, And India has a different neighbors, Brazil and Norway this time. And of course, I have put the top ones in China and Hong Kong. They're long-term orientation in terms of they're practical and they look at long-term benefits, and relationships are very important for them, and education is important for them. And it is in the stars that what they believe in. And the short-term culture is almost like, give us some stats. We would like to be. They are trendsetters, and they work more towards instant gratification and all that. So less than 44 is like USA, Australia, they're Mexico, they belong. And I think what Russia 81 is the wrong number there. It's 18. I think it's my typo error there. And you have Brazil and Norway and India, more or less long-term oriented. So this brings me to the last index, which is called IVR, indulgent versus restrained. So again, you can see that Australia and USA both are kind of indulgent. And China, and whereas India is more restrained, and we have a different neighbors, Italy and China. So indulgent, as I explained on the side here, it's they are friends with benefits and they're free as a bird. If the price is right, they will do it. But restrained, they have got more like care in the community. They are towards saving money for future needs and rainy days and all that. And they always proceed with caution and a lot of formality or formal process in place. So these 6 indices, which I was at a national level, at Indian, if you look at from top, this is how culture as amalgamation of different individuals are citizens of the country with different individual preferences and differences are the ones which are going to be like put together in a mishmash of numbers to create a different culture. So that is Indian a top level view. At the bottom, where the learning is happening at the individual levels, citizens, there also we have differences. Some of the innate talents wise, their attributes, their preference, and all that. If you look at it, we have individuals who are explorers, who seek novelty, who take risks. We have certain set of people, a group of individuals who are builders. They're not impulsive, and they would like to plan ahead. And some group, the negotiators, they always would like to consider all factors. They want to see everything on the plate first, and then look at possible outcomes of that. They belong to the negotiator groups. And the directors, they're very goal-oriented. They're purposeful. They know exactly what they're going to achieve. They work towards it. And even then, among those people, among those 4 different types of people, they learn differently. Their learning predisposition is different. And some of them may be learning much better visually, auditory-wise, sometimes. Other 2 senses like taste and smell don't play that much main thing. They're supporting roles. But I have got age here. As like adult literacy is also very important. I mean, it is one of those things. UNESCO back in 1985, they had this right to learn, which is a mandated requirement. I'll put up that if time permits, I'll put up the PDF thing on that to really say that's really right to learn is a right of humanity. That's what the extent they wanted every country in the world to adopt that. There is also, gender, there are preferences because some of them would like to learn, outside their classroom. Some gender. This is a study. UK and US studies have shown the female counterparts they have a different preference to learn and different expectations of what the level of curriculum is doing compared to the male counterparts. So we have a cultural, disposition at the India at the national level. And we have differences at individual level. So now how tough it is teachers work to make sure the learning really happens. And the educational processes are not going to be easily taken for granted that it is but the world is changing so fast. What has been assumed to work is not going to work anymore. We need to have little insight into different aspects of this, like culture, dispositions, and individual differences, and they all play more part into this 21st century learning. Why? It's a shifting world. The young people who are walking through the school gates are less inclined to receive this delivered curriculum, and they know more than what school has to offer. It is true, because they've got the iPads and other devices back at home. They explore a lot of things, and sometimes they know more than what the school is offering, and they get bored. And sometimes teachers need to cope with more indulgent students. They would like demand more, and then of course teachers demands from outside worlds are on increase for teachers. The scale, the complexity, the intensity of outside world pressures are on the rise. Like burnouts and sustainability, for teaching is debated increasingly all over the world, and it is not limited to developing world and all that. It's everywhere it's happening. And establishing emotional stability for learning within the classrooms or wherever the learning is happening has become a challenge. And lots of autonomy, like caused by prescribed programs, and which is very kind of glued together, and mandated curricula, all playing a part. And the loss of autonomy is also causing a lot of problems. And there's actually that we have to understand the shifting world and where we should be going while the world is getting shifted. So here, I should say the remodeling is not structure, our mindset, our culture. I would say everything, and I would like to really examine that everything through the QTiME lens. So the QTiME learning approach, a paradigm shift, part of it I have presented these slides in the first session. I explained everything, how the learning landscape is changing from conformity to diversity, scientific liberal, single to multi-dimensional learning, integration of learning happening on both the research side and skill side, academic and vocational, and how the outcomes, whether desired outcomes, economic and intellectual, are all merging together. I have taken up this in the first session. I won't spend too much time on here. And again, the QTiME paradigm shift, I have gone through all that in the first session. Please go through that at the time if you are new to this. But people who are already been there in the first one, they already know about what this slide is talking about. And the most importantly that I would like to examine at national level, the trust, the privacy, the behavior, the risk, and the investment. All these attributes are elements that play a role in the educational processes of 21st century. So I would like to view them in, as I said, it's a QTiME view. So here I want to bring in my trust as the first dimension. You have high trust, and your expertise is recognized, and automatically your credibility is very high, and that's how you build reputation. So trust is an enabler of credibility and enabler of reputation. So just obtaining expertise will not be enough to increase the credibility. Okay, you have to have a high trust enabled, and that's how you build reputation. And that's where my trust dimension learning comes into picture, where I stress upon these 4 learning quadrants of building a self-trust, and how you establish a group trust or relationship trust, and at the organization level, how the trust is kind of developed and also imparted and progressed, and societal, which is again cultural orientation is there, but we still can have that societal trust that's playing a big role in making the learning happening. So if you want to, there are a lot of things that we can talk about this, but I'm just presenting this in terms of how I'm going to view Indian QTiME perspective or trust perspective of India. And the behavior perspective is again analyzed through the innovation dimensions, where unlearnings and relearning and rebranding and resourcing are all going to change your mindset, and in turn you're going to change the learning behavior, and it creates a new environment. And there is again a innovation dimension or innovation perspective to the learning in 21st century. And the risk comes from the methods we employed. The method dimension quadrants, like how you apply, what kind of benchmarks you use, how you collaborate, and finally how you deliver. All these quadrants and the perspective of learning from these quadrants, they play a big role in how the risk is managed and also are mitigated at some point in time in the educational processes. So the investment comes mainly from the effort dimension. The investment comes from self. Many people forget that, like, oh yeah, the teachers are there, they will impart teaching for us, and that's it, I'm done. No, the investment has to happen from you, from self, the learner. And teacher, of course, is a catalyst. He is there as a provider. And of course, there's investment made by teachers to make learning happen. They would love to, reach the sky and bring the rainbows down and slice and dice it, explain how it works, but they have limited time. So if you look at the learning happening within the effort perspective, dimension perspective, you have to be cognizant of the fact that whether self-effort, a teacher's effort, and collaborating with the teams, peers, and over time, you have to practice and you have to really make it a, some of the time they say, if you want to unlearn some of the things, you repeat it 21 times, you will unlearn it. And you will, that's like 21 times is like, it takes some time too. So that many a times people ignore the time effort in many of the aspects of learning. So there is, we normally have got 3 years degrees and sometimes 4-year degrees, and they say, okay, the time effort required to complete a degree is 4 years in this country for this subject. But things are changing because many times many people can complete in 1.5 years. People have done that. So it is possible to use the new tools and techniques to make these things short or long, depending on what kind of outcomes are desired. So we look into the India in this QTiME learning dimensions, trust, innovation, and effort. And the learning outcomes I'm talking about, I have presented this before: trusted professionalism, innovation proficiency, efforts efficiency, and method maturity are the outcomes of QTiME. And recasting the productivity and also taking culture into account. The QTiME says a culture is a function of a trusted professionalism and innovation proficiency and efforts efficiency. And of course, efforts efficiency is a function of the methods maturity, how mature the methods are. So it is that famous equation is recasted in the QTiME dimensions and their outcomes. So by my and also if you can recast the individual differences, I would say I recast them in the QTiME steps that the learners can take. For example, explorers can start their learning process in discover step. The builders, like the traits of builder, they can start with the acquire step. The directors who are goal-oriented, they can begin step. They would love to really start something towards goal. A negotiator can work at the connect step. So this is the QTiME steps also can position itself nicely to the learners' differences, individual differences. So QTiME in nutshell is, again, I think I have gone through this last time, but those it is a multi-literacy focus is at its core, and it leverages technology for educational processes, and it imagine anything can be done through engagement. It broadens the base learning from a cross-curricular, and everything is important here, and it transforms education for a sustainable world, and it leverages the knowledge era to keep the chaos in check, and it works towards managing the learning in the complex and the connected world. That is the kind of QTiME in nutshell for you. More about in that in the previous one. So looking at India, Indian perspective, here I look at say QTiME for a comprehensive policy to working towards a comprehensive policy. How can we work towards that? By looking at India in a QTiME steps. So the first QTiME step, acquire. So what is the perspective that we can that India should have here? To really a diverse and with a lot of rural and urban areas spread across, sprawled around, and with the little connectivity, the basic access to content for every citizen should be kind of made as a policy strategy, and it should be the core of that. And you can overcome the scarcity of libraries by creating e-libraries. What you need to do, you don't have to have a traditional structure to create a library. You can simply have a person with a device connected like a laptop and have a e-library created, and the content can be thrown on his laptop, on her laptop, and then it's available for access. So that is the one way to work around the policy to make that happen, and also connect the urban and rural disparity, with the internet structure that is working only in the urban areas should also be available in the rural area. Overcome that disparity first, and how do you set some policy towards that? And how do you, begin targeting specific issues or gaps of each learner? We have to recognize, be cognizant of the individual differences, and make sure that learning happens in all those sectors, and invite players from other fields and other cross-curricular like experts for the inputs, make it happen. The discovery process here is how all these learning quadrants, and amongst 16 of them with the 4 dimensions. So how do we integrate them, or how do we sequence them, so that we can design a targeted learning? So we understand the gaps and everything, and what is required, the issues, and then we sequence it or integrate those learning quadrants, and that's the discovery process that has to happen. So when that happens, you would have a more what you call concrete policy insight to cater to a wide variety of learners. So the trust perspective of India, as I said, I'm not really authority in India, but I'm giving this is sharing my understanding of what should happen. So we need to encourage contributions, and we need to make sure that the failures are treated as learning experiences, not punishable. Many times we dread to fail. Like we've been ingrained, any small mistakes are punished. So because of that, it is very difficult for us to really make a mistake, and then we kind of retreat and not able to take chances, risks, or whatever that we should be doing as a learning experience. And any kind of participation should be rewarded aptly. Going into the group trust level, we need to have a national board or certification created to validate all these different contributions and experiences. We need to bring into these learners, how do you recognize an expert from a ranting entertainer on a subject? We need to really make sure that those things happen, and only the content is validated as contributions for the education are available to the learners. At the organizational level, like we need to consider licensing. Some institutions are governance monitored to governing boards, and the developing policy and administrations, like of learning. We should be examining all QTiME dimensions, and then start working towards creating a policy which will embrace all those learning dimensions. Coming to a society perspective or trust perspective, this is where India, being so diverse, both culturally as well as demographically, we need to embrace ethnic, cultural, and individual, and also the language differences. We have to change, once we embrace that, we have to change that perceptions on learning through those lenses. It is important for us to embrace them. And then it becomes a cohesive unit for learning. So moving on to the next dimension, which is the innovation perspective. It works on a mindset. How do we create a mindset? What do we need to unlearn? Okay, how do we position our their intentions and everything? So towards a diversity of culture, we should be recognizing that as a bliss for innovation, and we should be able to promote all kind of structures available to unlearn the cultural dispositions if possible. Relearning aspects have to be, as I said, QTiME is a cyclical and continuous process. We need to have these skills, recognize skills and education are inseparable as two sides of the coin. So we need to find ways to integrate them. And there are things happening. I was glad to see that when I was there for a year, lots of PU colleges are offering some vocational courses here. It is happening. It is showing the signs of progress there, and some relearning is happening, which is great. But at the same time, we need to make sure that unlearning also happens. We cannot just simply have certain things. A new learning has to happen, which can wash away the old learning. And we need to rebrand the entire educational process, looking at government as a partner, not as a controller. And there are a lot of NGOs who are in the mix in the educational process. And they're doing great work. Pratham, of course, I know that they want to put every child in the school. Great goal, vision that they have. And that promotes learning. That once you have that supporting volunteers of NGOs working towards to nurturing the education process, that's great. We need to somehow or the other have something to embrace them as part and parcel of the education process. And there are some private organizers. Some of the one of the things IT for Change, they were building content for middle class teachers using the time of middle class teachers. To really make it available to their students. So it is of course you have to have the internet. There was a lot of teething issues there, internet not working properly, being slow, not able to get the video content, but they have to listen with audio or images. That's all teething process, but we need to go through that, and that particular work from the NGO is really commendable. And the resourcing perspective that has to look into inviting scholars and researchers around the world for talks and hosting shows and also skills training. I mean, this VCP thing is a great idea. We don't need to be the scholars from outside who are relevant to the particular process can be over Skype, can be like webinars, and we need to have this. When we make a policy, we need to be able to include such like possibilities. Moving on to methods perspective of India, I would say that we need to have a mindset of do than fear to fail. I see most of fear of failing is stopping a lot of innovation, stopping a lot of progress. Well, I mean, we know that resources are all really difficult. I mean, I understand that we don't have the resources of developed countries to really work with, but we still have a lot of possible ways we can use technology. We can simulate. We can use the technology that the IT hub of India should be able to really have a lot of simulation activities to go through. And it doesn't matter which field it is, agriculture, whether it is other industries, manufacturing, retail, wholesale, banking, anything can be simulated. And you don't need to worry about trying to worry about oh yeah, it has to be built this way, and we're going to, if we fail, we're going to have this thing not working for us, a lot of resource wastage. We can go away with a lot of different ways. Technology is there for us now to use it. And we should also know that knowing is not same as doing. And there will be a what do you call a project-based learning webinar. We are planning here from 2nd week of April, and I hope that I will have a series of that going on at some point in time, where we are going to really, that's where you can say that the rubber meets the road. So we are going to have such things more open to through these VCPs. And benchmarking, okay, we have to establish best practices tuned to the demographics and also the culture. Okay, I mentioned earlier culture disposition, and we have to establish key performance indices and analyze the critical success factors in light of that. So we cannot exclude culture, and we can just simply start, oh, okay, this practice has worked in Australia or UK or US, let's adopt it. No. So try to think of localization, try to think of like putting into culture into picture, and then set up a benchmark of everyone and collaborate by understanding the issues in QTiME paradigm. QTiME paradigm means, like I explained earlier, it is a cyclical and continuous process, where thinking or learning is happening bound and unbound, and some of the thinking and learning is expanding and shrinking as the world shifts, the landscape changes. So all that thing has to be understood to collaborate, and a differentiated view of knowing, learning, and education will really help a lot. But delivering has to happen through a proof of concept or pilots, but it has to be like one or two. It is probably depends on demographics. Like if a one can represent 10 demographical situations, that's fine. Otherwise, you may have 10 of them. So we have that pilots going on, and this is, I would say, that a step closer to going autonomous without creating chaos in the educational system. Because anything fragmented learning is much worse, okay, than or a standardized learning. Okay, both are evils of different natures, but we need to be cognizant of the the pluses and minuses of both situations we are going to be in. So the last, investment perspective. So we have to build character at the lowest level. We have to take into account the individual differences. We need to really promote, nurture them, and make sure that they understand themselves, who they are, and then build the entire character around that. That's the investment at the lowest level. At the providers level, if you're looking at teachers, we should make sure that, like I have heard a lot of absenteeism of teachers in rural areas. We can counter that in different ways, and we need to promote sharing, to collaborate, across different faculties. STEM is a great idea, but I don't know how STEM is looked at in India. That's another thing, just to collaborate through science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or through projects and all that. And we have to ease the mounting pressures from the connected world. That they have to look at that. The group effort, the investment there comes from recognizing the group outcomes while we are highlighting the individual differences. Okay, and the time effort, of course, is all dependent on how we recognize and promote the sitting efforts. All kinds of sitting efforts can happen. Need not be limited to what QTiME would propose, or QTiME as a seed to make learning happen relevant. Many things can happen, but we need to at least have a certain investment made now, because we know that, okay, it'll take a year or two, or maybe more or less, depending on the effort. That the time is also an essence in making that learning happen for 21st century. So I don't think I have coming to the end of the 10 minutes. Like, I want to really this particular poem was very intriguing for me. I will not read it now, because I need to give some time for Q&A. I think I'm almost running 9 for 15 minutes left now. So this is a poem about how teachers wrestles in the school world, but where's the same account, and I go to the end of it, where the contrast of the educational process versus financial process are brought in this poem. It's a very comical, fascinating, as well as information wise, very insightful poem. And then this, of course, when I have that thing available, you should be able to pause this video on demand and read that. It's really, really good, really appropriate for the current situation. It applies to the 21st century thing when the world is shifting. So I'm on the last slide. I would like to open the floor for question Q&A session. And thank you very much for coming to this webinar, and thank you for spending some time with me. And I know that tomorrow is like India versus Australia, I think, happening, and everybody's mind is there tomorrow, because originally this was on 26th, and I really thought, oh well, okay, there is a lot of distracting thing going on, so why not we have it today, so we can peacefully watch the match tomorrow. So I thought I will get it going, and I thank Sridhar and other organizers who made it possible for me. Thank you very much. I'm okay to now to get some questions, Sridhar. Hello?
We'll give them 1 or 2 minutes to type in their questions.
Oh, okay. Well, just go back to that poem thing and let it there for people to read. If they are people who are not having questions, at least they can go through this and enjoy the poem. Need not be only questions. Even comments are also welcome. Any improvement for presenting the same thing in different way, whatever. It's all welcome. And let me put up another slide here, which is right to learn while I'm at this. This is one of the PDFs I had about all those UNESCO Declaration of Right to Learn. Just put up this one for people to view. It said somewhere there can be no human development without the right to learn. It's amazing and very profound words. I see them there. Sridhar, audio was very clear today too?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good, thank you.
So there seem to be no questions, sir. I hope they can send them by email to you or us.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, like, I mean, will you be able to ask them? Because I don't know whether they can. I can't hear them. Or if there are no questions, I would really thank the attendees for making their time to attend this webinar. So, are you expecting to see any questions coming up?
No, sir. We waited for some time. They
Okay.
might
In the
be
meantime,
sending.
anyway, I will show this. What do you call that? Poem. Probably I will. Where is that here? Or maybe they're all thinking, you know, or digesting what has been presented. I mean, I have a lot of stuff to present. I think probably I could have broken this into two webinars, but I just wanted them to get connected in the same webinar if possible. And if there are any interest of that, I mean, of course, it's available as a recording thing on the YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay.